Well, it's wonderful to have you here this evening. We've had a few more join. We have Sanford on the line. Someone is enjoying our White Pines Nature Preserve. We'll be talking about that some today. We have a guest from Toronto, Canada. It's fantastic. And you're trying to cut down on your food consumption. We have, again, several here from Durham. It's really lovely to have you here this evening. I am your host for tonight's installment of Conservation Conversations. I'm Christine Wilson, TLC's Director of Advancement. And we are excited to have our board members here this evening to walk us through why they are inspired to support TLC. In these strange times, we hope that you will take care of yourselves. To continue to connect with you all while participating physical distancing, TLC offers conservation conversations every Wednesday evening to share information about the work of TLC and our partners. You will have an opportunity to connect with the panelists during the Q&A section towards the end of this program. We hope to answer most of your questions, but if we run out of time, we'll answer them offline. Please take a moment to locate the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. All questions should be submitted through this feature. Like many of you, TLC staff and speakers are logged in remotely, so bear with us as the internet might be slower than normal. You may also hear an occasional dog bark or cat's meow, children, partners, or roommates' voices. TLC was founded in 1983 by a group of dedicated citizens who were concerned about balancing growth and conservation of open space in the Triangle region. Together with thousands of members, we've protected over 20,000 acres of land and 141 miles of stream across Wake, Orange, Durham, Johnston, Lee, and Chatham counties. TLC strives to create a healthier and more vibrant Triangle region by safeguarding clean water, protecting natural habitats, supporting local farms and food, and connecting people with nature through land protection, stewardship, catalyzing community action, and collaboration. Our work is made possible because of the support of members like you and our sponsors. As many of you know, today is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day and TLC's annual Giving Day, and we're delighted that longtime TLC members Pam and Brad Heminger have offered to match all gifts made today up to $25,000. We are thrilled by the community's enthusiastic response today, and we'll share an exciting update about the matching challenge at the end of tonight's program. To all those who have made a donation, thank you for helping TLC celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day by raising $50,000 to protect beautiful spaces throughout the Triangle. Tonight, I'm joined by TLC's Executive Director, Sandy Sweitzer, who will be speaking with board members Mavis Gragg, Sam Cook, Marlena Byrne, and Sean Lilly Wilson about what inspires their passion for conservation and why they choose to support TLC. Welcome, all. Sandy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Christine. And I'm really excited to interview just a few of TLC's awesome board members. Actually, it was really hard to even figure out who to ask because we have right now 15 or 16 really great board members. And anyway, this is just a sampling of how awesome they are. So we are going to do it a little differently tonight. If the people have been part of this before, we have had one speaker who shares their screen. And in this case, we are all sharing our screens and kind of having a conversation. We all have something to drink, partly because we have Sean here from Full Steam. So there's a little, product placement for that. So I am going to introduce the board members as we go around. And so, and I have a question for each of them. So we're going to start with Mavis Gragg, who is TLC's board chair. She is an attorney and conservation professional with nearly 2 decades of experience in real estate, conflict resolution, and estate planning, and probate. Mavis is currently the Director of Sustainable Forestry and African American Land Retention at the American Forest Foundation. She's a member of the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Authority, and with her sister, Mavis co-founded Black Women Drone and the Gragg Family Fund. So Mavis, tell us about how long you've been on TLC's board and how does TLC's work link with your professional life? You're muted.
Thank you, Sandy. Hey, everyone. Hey, Marlena, Sam, Sean, Christine, Casey, Deja, and everyone else who joined us. I'm excited to be here. I even pulled out my TLC swag.
Nice.
For today. So I joined TLC's board towards the end of 2016. I had just returned to the area in 2015 and opened a law practice that focused on intergenerational land wealth and met.
Or as you used to say, death and dirt.
Death and dirt, yes, death and dirt. So helping families think about how they keep their land and be good stewards of their land for multiple generations. And I met Sandy and some other TLC staff at a TLC event, and it piqued my interest. I hadn't considered being on a board for a conservation organization, but it totally made sense because I work with families that have land that they want to take care of and want to benefit the community. And so we met up a short time after that, and Sandy sold me on joining the board. And I'm so glad I did. So I joined in 2016, and it has helped me, I think, be a good citizen in the Triangle. And it also has helped me serve my clients and other folks that I care about in terms of understanding the benefits of conservation and what individuals and organizations and communities can do together. So that's why I came and how it connects to my work. So very excited to be on the board, and 4 years later, almost still excited.
Well, thanks. And Mavis keeps me in line because she is an attorney, and I make sure I use the right language on things. So the next person I want to introduce is Sam Cook, who is TLC's vice chair. He has made his mark on multiple aspects of forestry during his esteemed 35-plus year career. He's currently the Executive Director of Forest Assets and Vice President of Natural Resources Foundation for the College of Natural Resources at NC State. We have awesome board members. They have very long titles. There, he coordinates the management of forest assets owned or managed by NC State Natural Resources Foundation. He also volunteers and supports many forestry, conservation, and land trust organizations. So Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about how long you've been on the board and how it connects with your professional background?
Yes, hello everyone, my fellow board member colleagues that's spending time with us tonight. Having a nice glass of wine or cold beer, speaking to the audience out here. Well, I've been on close to 3 years, and it was all intentional because I was a stalker of TLC for the first year and a half. Spent quite a bit of time going to wild ideals, and a friend of mine by the name of Margaret Sands, who's a strong conservationist and working for TLC, friend of her family down in the Pawleys Island, South Carolina area. And Mavis, they both sort of convinced me that this would be a good opportunity to join, and I spent another year tracking what TLC was doing within the community. And since I am a registered forester and a USDA technical service provider across the 3 southern states, North and South Carolina, along with Virginia, it works and aligns with the work that I do. As Sandy mentioned, I oversee the state's lands that we consider under the endowment, the Natural Resources Foundation, and some state appropriated. So we have 10 properties making up about 100,000 acres of land. We generate income. We practice sustainable forest management. We do a lot of conservation and preservation work. We work with a lot of conservation groups, land trust groups. So all of our work overlaps The biggest difference for us, we are in it sometimes to somewhat make money, but we also in it to make the land work for families and others around it. It's a great opportunity for me with the background that I've had. I enjoy the work that I do. I enjoy the profession, and working with a group like this who has preserved over 20,000 acres so far in the Triangle area, I think it makes our lives better as we operate within this state area.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think a lot of people don't realize that forestry is an agricultural practice that it's an agricultural practice. Like it's a kind of farming. It's hard to imagine that those giant trees are farming, but they are. So I appreciate your perspective. Next, I want to introduce Marlena Byrne. Marlena works for the state of North Carolina on long-term disaster planning and climate change policy with the Office of Recovery and Resiliency. She's an environmental and land use lawyer. And prior to moving to North Carolina 3 years ago, Marlena was Deputy City Attorney for the City and County of San Francisco. She currently serves as the chair of TLC's Human Resources and Governance Committee. Thanks for coming, Marlena. So
Sure.
you want to talk a little bit about how long you've been on the board and how you see it fits in with your background?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. It's good to see my fellow board members' faces and Sandy, your face. And it's great to be on here with everyone who's participating. So I moved here 3 years ago from San Francisco, and I have been an environmental attorney for my whole career, pretty much. And now I think I graduated law school 20 years ago. So this is now kind of a long career. I'm not currently working as an attorney, however. I decided not to take the North Carolina bar. Once was enough. But when I moved here, I actually started doing a lot of informational interviewing because I knew that I wanted to stay in the environmental field. It's definitely my vocation, not just my job. And I wanted to specifically work in the realm of climate change. I've been a land use lawyer for my whole career before that, and there's such an important link between how we use land and the impacts that we're having on climate change in the whole world. So in that process of informational interviewing, I actually met Sandy. She was someone I got connected to pretty quickly and found out about the work of the Triangle Land Conservancy. And I think boards always also like to have at least one lawyer, if not more, on them.
Not
so
too
I pretty
many.
quickly, yeah, not too many, but a couple sprinkled through to tell you, when you can't do something. So I pretty quickly got invited to be on first the governance and human resources committee, and then to be on the full board. So I've been on the board now a little over a year, and it's been a great experience.
Yeah, that's a good point that we often ask people who we think might be good board prospects to serve on committees first to kind of, figure out what we do and make sure they show up to meetings and that kind of thing. Great, thanks. So finally, I want to introduce Sean Lilly Wilson. He is the Chief Executive Optimist at Full Steam Brewery. He founded and led both Pop the Cap and Permit Beer, two beer lobbying organizations that have opened up economic markets to North Carolina's craft beer industry. He holds both an MBA and a Master's of Public Policy from Duke, and is a four-time James Beard Foundation semifinalist in the category of Outstanding Wine, Beer, or Spirits Professional. And we didn't mention all of his accolades at Full Steam, but there are a lot. So, Sean, you want to talk a little bit about how long you've been on TLC's board and what inspired you?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Sandy. I've been on almost 2 years, and my experience with TLC predates that. For a number of years, we worked together to forage the woods and collaborate on events. So it was a natural to kind of extend that experience and transition into the board. I had been working on the North Carolina Craft Brewers Guild. I was the board president for a couple of years, and I kind of felt like I had done all that I wanted to do on leadership on the beer side, and I was looking for ways to give back in areas that really were personal to me, and extending into TLC from all the work that we had done was a natural. At Full Steam, we're really, our passion is connecting people to the land and to one another. And I mean, that's so aligned with TLC, and it's a great fit. And I'm thankful to be a part of it and glad to be here. This is fun.
This is great. I have to say that I did one of these before, and I just was talking to the screen, and it was not as much fun, and I had no idea like what was happening out there. So at least we have us, we can see each other, so that's good.
Sandy,
you have your beer. Oh, another.
Yeah, I'm drinking a Full Steam beer that I picked up today at Whole Foods, and it's delicious. What's in this one, Sean? The Wild Durham. I have the Wild Durham.
The Wild Durham is mostly local grain, and then we foraged with throughout Durham. So it's like a Durham urban forage with chickweed, henbit, redbud flowers, persimmon from last year's harvest, cherry blossoms. Good stuff.
Where are you located?
Where Full Steam located?
Yes.
Oh, wow. This is, I feel like I should pay for a sponsorship.
Yeah, let's not talk about Full Steam anymore. They're in Durham. They make a great Brumley Porter. We'll talk about that later. All right, simmer down.
Before we move on, though, what is henbit?
It's a spring weed.
Yep.
People think a weed is just a plant that you haven't yet found a use for, but we found a use for it.
It's a weed in your garden, whatever. It's always, yeah, we can talk about that later.
Put up with? I'm just kidding.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask another question, you guys. Tell me about your favorite preserve and why is it your favorite? Mavis, will you go first?
Well, I will say that I went to Horton Grove is my favorite. Horton Grove is in North Durham, and it's my favorite because it the history. So Horton Grove, the preserve is actually formerly part of one of the largest, if not the largest, plantations in the South, and TLC has redeveloped it into a space where it's protecting species, it's protecting clean water, and it's also connecting people to nature. And when I go out there, I feel really connected, particularly to the history. I care a lot about the history of land because that informs so much of my work with families that I am working with. And so this is a great example of how a conservation organization can not only make a difference from a natural resources perspective, but also from a history perspective. This place likely has a ton of very painful and unjust stories on it, and now the land is being used to benefit everyone. So I would say that Horton Grove is my favorite. I do need to get around to some of the other ones. Sam, what's your favorite?
Well, I like Horton Grove, but one of my all-time favorites is the Bailey and Sarah Williamson's Preserve, which is now in progress to somewhat have a stage opening. But the main purpose behind liking it is it's 2,700 acres. It's 20 minutes west of Raleigh, the capital.
It's only 400 acres, Sam, sorry.
Well, it was 2,700 that we were working toward.
2,700 acres.
Part of the 2,700 acre farm.
That's right. That's right.
But what I do love about it is you get to practice forestry out there. They got longleaf pine, they got loblolly, they got mixed understory of hardwoods and lots of hardwoods, lots of water, lots of farming, all the way down to cattle. Lots of opportunities for people to do ag, forestry, and it's so close that you can get out and enjoy the preserves and really participate in nature. But you can actually see people that are enjoying the different things, the different aspects of what's going on out there. What I'm really encouraged about is multiple use. It allows us to do many things and showcase how farm, ag, and forestry can work together along with conservation. And Sean, I know that you have a favorite, so why don't you spend some time telling us which is the one you would love to talk about.
It's hard to pick just one. When I was first getting familiar with TLC, I would have said Johnston Mill I just have such great memories of my kids being little. My kids are basically grown now, but when they were small, we would spend hours upon hours in the creek and in the woods in a very diverse ecosystem. So for those of you participating, listening in, if you haven't been to Johnston Mill, it's a great spot. These days, I'm a Chatham County resident, and I find myself down in White Pines a lot, going south to the southernmost public access of TLC's properties and lands. And I just love that area. It's so peaceful and tranquil, and again, a great diversity of plant life. Of course, the trees themselves, the white pines, and good trails that seem to be ever expanding. It's so well kept there, and just a very fun drive. If you do go down, I recommend taking the long way back. If you're coming from the Triangle area, don't go just straight up 15501, but find some of those side roads. There's some great little roads that still cross I think the Deep River, and some of the areas down there that you just feel like you're in a different world, and it's lovely. I love driving down from where I live. It's about 40 minutes, and taking about an hour and 40 minutes to get back home. Marlena, you're up. What's your fave?
You're muted, Marlena. Sorry. There you go.
Technical difficulties. All right. I really love Brumley Preserve, which is currently our most recently opened preserve, because we're still in the process of opening up the Bailey and Sarah Williamson Preserve. But yeah, when I moved here, so just going back a little bit about my history, I was fortunate to be raised by two parents who loved to hike and grew up in Pasadena in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains. And we would pretty much every weekend, when it wasn't blazing hot in the summer, go up into the mountains and go hiking. And then I've lived until just a few years ago, my entire adult life in the Bay Area, where there's lots of great hiking options. And when I moved here to North Carolina to be with my now husband, I realized that some of the best hiking options are actually these great nature preserves that Triangle Land Conservancy has open to the public. There aren't as many public park opportunities. I mean, there's some. The River State Park is great, and Jordan Lake has some great hiking options, but really it's these beautiful nature preserves that the Triangle Land Conservancy operates that have drawn me in. And Brumley's great because a couple years ago we adopted a little rescue mutt, and we love to take her for hikes. She loves going hiking, but she's very short legs and her stamina varies quite a bit. So Brumley's great because the north part of Brumley is all these interconnecting loops of trails, and you can do like a little 2-mile loop, or you can do a 6-mile loop, depending on how many of them you want to link together. It's just such a beautiful spot. You really get a sense of the land there, and the fact that it's a former, working farm and agricultural land, but there's also a beautiful little, creek / we call it a river in California, but here I think it's like a creek running through the property. That's really pretty, and my stepsons often splash around in there, and my dog does too. And it's just, I really like spending time there. It's a great place to hike any time of the year because you really get to see a beautiful sense of the seasons passing there too.
Great. Thank you all. That was awesome. We are really far behind schedule, and we want to make sure we leave time for questions and answers. So I'm going to combine a couple questions. So today is Earth Day, and it's TLC's Spring Day of Giving. So I wondered if you could talk about what part of TLC's work is most inspiring to you? Like, what gets you excited that you feel like you want to make sure people know about? And I'm going to start with Sean on this one.
Well, this is as Christina started off as saying, unusual times, and I feel like I as introverted as I actually am, I do love a good party, and I love the educational components, the wild ideas, the seminars, the sessions, all the learning that comes with TLC, which is a lot of work. Like Christine and Deja and Bo and all the staff work so hard to put on these great seminars and learning moments. And a lot of times they take place in urban areas, like at Marbles, for example, and in downtown environments. And as somebody who works in a downtown and lives out in the quasi country, I think I resonate with that kind of that mission of connecting the people and learning and education and just having some fun and throwing a good party, all with a mission and a purpose of educating the public about the importance of open spaces.
We know how to throw a good party at TLC.
You do, we're long overdue for one. So
We are all long overdue for one.
We're doing our best here. I'm going to be biased and throw this question to Mavis, who's my fellow full steam beer drinker here this evening. What's your favorite aspect of TLC and how it relates to Earth Day?
Yeah, so this is the second board that I have served on, and I think when you have a lot of responsibilities in your life, but you want to serve your community, board service is a great way to do that. But at the same time, it can require a lot of you, and I think it's important to work with an organization that has their stuff together. And so that's one thing that I appreciate about TLC is that at the same time, things are moving at a very fast pace. We have very ambitious goals that we are working towards. It allows you to learn and to do work that is having a positive impact. So I think board members at TLC commit a lot to TLC, including me. As Sandy mentioned, as board chair, she and I communicate very regularly. We have once a week meetings, check in and so forth. So it is a huge time commitment, but it's worth it because you can see that the impact is happening and you can see the connection to your contribution as a board member to the work on the ground. And then I would say also just in terms of learning, I continue to be fascinated with what all goes into conserving land. There's the relationships are so important, and it can be a multi-year, and often is a multi-year relationship building process with landowners. And then there's the financial aspect of it. I'm learning a lot about land transactions in the conservation world. I mean, it's a lot of money that's managed and creatively sourced. And it's just fascinating to see. So I appreciate those learnings and the opportunity to serve on TLC's board. So that's why I stick with it. And Sandy's nice.
Throw a good party.
What about you, Marlena?
Sure. I'm very inspired by nature in general. And I think that, TLC has just some beautiful pieces of property under conservation. And so that's very inspiring to me. But I think more specifically to TLC, I'm really inspired by all the hard work and dedication of the staff and my fellow board members. I think that for me, that's really, it gives me a lot of hope, and it gives me a lot of inspiration myself to see so many smart, skilled, educated, committed people working really, really hard to make this world a better place, and specifically in the realm of, environmental action and conservation. And I think in some ways that's also been, something I've learned is just how much work goes into this. Mavis already touched on that, but the amount of work that goes into putting these real estate deals together, the long-term relationships. I mean, some of these relationships with landowners are, the product of years worth of work and cultivation to get to the point where someone's comfortable with turning over what may be like a property that's been in their family for generations to TLC to use as part of their, you know, to their conservation work or even ownership. So I think that that has been both surprising and very inspiring to me. So.
Speaking of the board, here's a great photo of the board at our retreat that happened on March 7th, like just before everything changed, when we were allowed to be together out at Williamson Preserve. We have a great board.
Yeah. So
Really
Sam, I see you sort of standing somewhat behind me in that photo. What would you say is the most like inspiring and also or surprising things about your work with TLC?
Well, I'm gonna try to get us back on time and make it short and sweet. I want to say ditto to all three of what all three said, because at the end of the day, the staff is magnificent, leadership is perfect, community outreach is what inspires me a lot. What I really love is how you engage city people with the rural areas, how we bring nature within the city to allow people to see that it's right next door to their home. It reminds me of growing up. I lived somewhat in a small town. We had a 40-acre farm. I had no idea what forestry was all about. I knew about agricultural, but what it allowed me to do is appreciate nature by getting out and going to those places that was special and near to me. So really put a plug in for Wild Ideas. When you hear about it, spend some time getting to learn. Come visit with it, see what goes on. Land protection is critical. Just working with the community as a whole is the best thing that we can do, and what TLC does within the Triangle.
Great. Thank you all. And I didn't even cry once. That was great. I really appreciate your dedication and commitment. We wanted to leave some time for questions and answers. But I wanted to say again to folks who've been listening, I think you four are representative of just a glimmer of the kind of expertise and passion and dedication that all of the board members bring to TLC. When I became executive director 5 years ago, I think it was, my biggest worry, honestly, was working with the board. I had worked with difficult boards in the past, and I have not ever had a time in my tenure that I felt like working with the board was hard. I feel y'all really give great guidance and advice, and if any other board members are on, I want to give them a shout out too. We might have to do this again. So I think we'll stop with the questions that we have. I think there are questions for the group, and I'll turn it over to Christine. Thank you each very much for doing this, and we'll see what happens with the Q&A. Try to,
Sure. Yeah, thank you all. I have a few questions that are coming in. The first one is from an attendee in Durham, and this person would like to know, what does TLC leadership believe its conservation impact will be in light of air and quality in the North Carolina Triangle as the region continues to grow in population and demand on local infrastructure?
Sandy, do you want us to answer that question, or I can say I can answer part of that question. I can say that was it 3 years ago at our board retreat?
like that 2.5?
2.5, yeah. When we revisited our strategic plan, we talked about it in the context of the huge growth that is happening in the Triangle, and the fact that in a significant way we are competing with development, and being very mindful of what that looks like, but also being mindful of what it means to engage the community in the visioning as we move along. So we are very I mean, for my part, I could say that we're very aware of the challenges that we face with respect to development, and not saying development's a bad thing or anything like that, but just being very strategic in how we address it. And that's why we increased the pace of conservation. We have some very high goals to conserve land by a certain date. and the number of people we want to engage and the amount of money we need to raise to be able to do it. So definitely a lot of thought has been put into that. I don't know if any of the other board members want to chime in, or if Sandy, you want to answer the question more specifically in terms of like.
No, that was great. Do others have anything to add?
I'd chime in and just say, I think that the fact that this area is developing so quickly makes this work all the more important. I mean, it's really, really necessary that we work on creating some growth boundaries, and that we don't just continue to sprawl out into agricultural land and undeveloped land, but really that we focus, our development a little bit more and preserve the land that we have around us, which is so beautiful and is so important to the health of our environment, but also the health of our of us psychologically, to be able to go out and make nature, to be able to have these places that we can get to, with a 10-minute drive or a 45-minute drive is really important for all of us, I think. And that's work that is all the more important because of the incredible pace of development happening here right now.
Well, and honestly, with the pandemic and TLC preserves being open, among the only green places that are open to the public right now, we've just seen an outpouring of gratitude. So I'm going to make sure I said that to y'all board members and to donors too, just that I really appreciate people doing physical distancing so that we can keep them open. Sam, did you want to add something to that question?
Yeah, I was about to say we need to be proud of what has already happened and what's going on to date, because people are moving here because of the green space that's already protected. The more you look around to see how much green space is protected, the more opportunity it gives us to go out and seek more funds to do more. So I'm very impressed with what is happening with TLC and how we are working with other conservation groups to do more land protection.
Great. Are there any other questions we should answer, Christine? I saw a couple.
Sure.
I'm having trouble tracking them all.
Yeah, I am too. I'm trying to keep up with them. There's some good questions in here. There is a question from Raleigh that is asking, to the board members, what is your favorite memory or event since becoming a part of TLC's board?
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Do we have to pick one?
Yes.
I will say that I'm just off the top of my head, I'm sure there are more, but I will say that I did teach at a local law school, and one day I took some students out to Horton Grove, my favorite preserve, for a hike. And I don't know how many of you know lawyers or law students, but we can be tightly wound. We can often forsake our health for the work, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But it was amazing because these law students were like skipping, and they were talking about their childhood memories. And some of them said to me, Professor Gragg, I mean, I just haven't played outside since I was a kid. Thank you so much. And, on the one hand, it's like, I mean, outside's right there. You just go out the door. But on the other hand, you can get away from that, those special feelings that you experience when you are outside and when you are connected with nature. And so it made me feel really good as a professor to share that experience with them. But also I felt encouraged that they would then take that and bring other people outside. So that's probably my favorite. What about you, Sean?
Oh, for me, it's really around Brumley Forest and the experiences that we've had foraging with volunteers and of both Full Steam and TLC, and just going back and exploring that land, particularly in the fall. We make this beer called Brumley Forest. It won a Good Food Award a couple years ago. It's a Baltic porter, like a dark beer, and it's made with foraged hickory nuts and black walnuts and sassafras from Brumley Forest. And it's just this great, I would just have this visceral memory of bringing my family out and joining others, about a group of maybe 30 of us. We've gone a couple of times, but probably that first time when we went out and just had a great time harvesting and connecting, and the work that came from that. I mean, if anybody's worked with black walnuts, they're they're difficult. It's a labor of love. It's not easy.
I was honestly shocked that that beer was so good. I was like, black walnuts are really bitter, and I don't know what kind of chemical, whatever thing y'all do, it was really impressive.
Well, we didn't do anything chemically. It was all,
But you know what I mean? Like,
manual. I mean, just for the,
it was science.
What's that?
It was science.
Yeah. There's science involved for sure. And, but there was a lot of nature, and it all, it reminds me of this, the goodness that comes from these lands. I was thinking about the last question and about the importance of protecting land. And I don't know, I've lived in the Triangle since 1992, and I just have this visual of flying, of departing RDU, and what it used to be like and what it's like now. And if there's ever a reminder of the importance of protecting land for these types of experiences, whether you're foraging or going on a walk, it's fly out of RDU and take a look, because yeah, we have a lot of green space, but it's because of TLC and others, but it's because of TLC. And boy, we are growing, and all you need to do is look at all the cul-de-sacs and all the growth that comes as you fly out as a reminder of why we need to protect the land that we do. So thank you to Sandy and team for doing what you do. I'm going back on mute.
Right.
Sandy, there's another couple of questions that have some similarity to them that I think would be great for the board to comment on. There's one that says, I'm a young, busy professional who's currently not working in the conservation-related field, but is very passionate about environmental issues. How would you recommend I start to get connected to local environmental activism? And the other one was talking about, how does TLC bring together conservation and environmental justice?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because Mavis and Marlena have really been helping us with that one. Does somebody I would say it's a little tricky right now to get involved in local environmental groups, just because we're all remote. But I do encourage you to visit as many TLC preserves as you can. We have a little competition where you can, a hiking challenge where if you visit all the preserves, you get these really cool badges and stuff like that. So now's a great time to do that. But do you guys also want to talk? And we also have a ton of volunteer activities normally. So keep an eye on our website, sign up for our e-newsletter, and we're trying to figure out what that looks like going forward. But of course, none of us knows. So
for the first part of the question, I would also recommend to the young individuals to spend some time when Wild Ideas do open back up to attending those events, because they're evening events, a lot of fun. You get to hear nice, good speeches and from people that are involved in the community doing great work, and it will give you an opportunity to pick someone that you want to be passionate about, or pick an organization you want to work within. But also you'll get to learn more about what TLC is doing.
Yeah, so the question about how is TLC bringing conservation and environmental justice together? I will say that our conservation is guided by very clear objectives for why we do the work that we do. I think in terms of environmental justice, I don't think we think about it explicitly. Like, we don't say this is an environmental justice, so that it doesn't line up with the description. But I will say the impact of what we do is connected with environmental justice, or I should say environmental injustice. So for example, the Williamson Preserve is in an area of Wake County that is heavily diverse. That sounds weird. That's very diverse.
It's one of the most diverse farming communities in the region.
Yeah, and at one time it had the highest number of freed Blacks farming in that area, which was a long time ago, but the area is still very diverse, and there is a landfill that is in close proximity to that preserve. And so TLC is very conscious about, as we create this space and develop this preserve, being mindful of what are the other opportunities to expand the conservation so that we can counter some of those effects. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's, I would say that the bridging of conservation and environmental justice is more intuitive and natural. We're not an environmental justice organization per se, but I do believe, and because I consider myself an environmentalist, I do believe that the impact of our work does touch environmental justice.
Yeah, I would add to what you're saying also that I think one of the most important pieces of environmental justice is understanding the history of the land that you're talking about. I mean, I think you can't have meaningful environmental justice without understanding what has happened on the land before you got there. And I think that that's something that we're starting to really explore with the Bailey and Sarah Williamson Preserve. I know that we're partnering, and I'm embarrassed to say, I can't remember whether it's with UNC or NC State. UNC.
Histories Project.
Yeah, with their Histories Project to really start to learn more about the land there, because it has a long history that is very interesting with, the families that have owned that property and the enslaved people who've lived there, and that a lot of those families are still in the area and are interested in the work we're doing there. So I think that there is a really important role that TLC has to play, not just, certainly looking forward to how we're preserving the land that we're preserving, how we're conserving it, the people that we're bringing on, who our membership is, our outreach, our educational efforts, but also looking back and understanding the history of the land that we're stewards of, I think is a really important component of environmental justice, telling that story.
I think we do a lot on talk about sort of diversity, equity, inclusion, and all different aspects of our work. But I think one of the best examples of that is actually Horton Grove, where it's right adjacent to Stagville Plantation. And I wasn't at TLC at the time, but the staff who were in board who were there at the time really highlighted a lot of the enslaved, the free Black families who lived there stayed on after the Civil War. And so the trails are named after the families who still have descendants in the area, and tell sort of the story of those families too. So that's one example. It's not exactly environmental justice, I wouldn't say, but that's one of the things we've done. Anything else, Christine?
So there's a question here about the trees that we see at the preserves that we are showing the pictures of. So it says, where are some of the most magnificent, oldest trees, and what are the types? And so we're going to have Bo Howes, our Director of Conservation and Stewardship, join us. He's on the line. And
wow, I could answer part of that question,
Drop in.
So hopefully this will work. Bo, are you able to chime in on that?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Thanks everybody. So for me, there are at least 3 different kinds of trees that you should come and look at a TLC preserve. First, White Pines Nature Preserve, named after the white pine, which is a remnant Ice Age population. So those trees haven't been there since, those particular trees haven't been there since the Ice Age, but that variety of trees have been there for a long, long time. And it's this unique north-facing slope that the white pine is on. And they're pretty unique for the triangle. And then second, Brumley Forest has these really old oak trees, primarily white oak, but some red oak as well, that are around the old home sites that are there. So they were planted probably 200 or so years ago, and they're magnificent. They're just massive, and they look like massive old oak trees. And then the third one, which is a little different, which is the loblolly pine forest at Horton Grove. Now, loblollies are not necessarily a majestic pine tree, but they're pretty special at Horton Grove because they're way older than they usually are in this area, because we haven't harvested them. We're not going to, and they really look like a longleaf pine savanna. That's a neat place to go see out at Horton Grove. So come on out and see them.
Well, I don't know anything about trees, but my favorite ones are the beech trees at Horton Grove. I think they're really beautiful. The understory there is really nice.
Yeah.
And the other one is soon, in the next few months, we are going to hopefully be able to open Williamson Preserve, and the post oak trees there are just absolutely spectacular. Every time I go out, I take pictures of the same 4 trees. They're just so majestic.
Sandy, I'll also add that the beech trees at Swift Creek Bluffs that we haven't really called out today.
We didn't even talk about that.
Are amazing, and they're abundant, and that special place is really a treasure. So I'd encourage people to go there. Well, I think we need to wrap up. Would you like to say some thanks, Sandy, and then I'll take over?
I do. I'm really eager to hear about the Earth Day Challenge, because I heard there was some action going on my phone while we were doing this. So I want to make sure we give an update on that. But I also want to thank Mavis and Sam and Sean and Marlena for being here. This was really fun. I hope y'all had fun. I would love to do this again with some other board members too. I just think, we could have, it's such an interesting conversation. We didn't even have time to ask all the questions. So, yeah. So anyway,
Totally worth it.
thank you.
I gave today, Sandy.
What?
I gave today.
Yes, we had.
I did too.
We had amazing amount of board support for Giving Day, and in general, board members are doing great. Wow.
Sandy,
Okay.
I am so excited to announce that we are going to keep the momentum going. We have already met our $25,000 match to raise $50,000 in honor of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And we have 2 generous donors who have offered to stretch our goal by $20,000 to help us raise $45,000 to conserve habitat, clean water, to support our local farms and food. So thank you to everyone who has donated already. If you have not, there's plenty of time. You can do it directly on our website. And we are just so pleased by the generosity of our community, who is going to help us have a more resilient future for many generations.
Christine, I want to make sure I get this. So we have raised 25,000, and now we've got 20,000 more challenge to raise a total of 45. But really, it's more than that because we got those extra gifts. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. So it would be a total of 70,000, and I know we can do it. Our supporters are amazing, and the donations just keep flying in today. I've got an email box full of them. I think there was 150 different emails in there when I logged in to host this. So thank you to everyone who is helping to support conservation. And I wanted to give a quick shout out. You heard from Bo a minute ago. He will be our presenter for next week's Conservation Conversation. So on April 29th, he'll be sharing the importance of conservation land to our feathered friends. So please join him. He took this beautiful picture of a merganser at Brumley, and he'll be sharing many more insights into how we can protect our lands for feathered friends. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This was great.
Have a good evening.
Cheers.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.